My name is Jessica Farringer. Welcome. I'm the director of the Data for Impact project, and I'm happy to welcome you to this webinar on a tool to measure the gender competency of family planning providers, providing insights from provider experience in Ghana. Catherine Andronopoulos, Jana Wisniewski, and Evelyn Coco are our presenters today. This webinar, next. This webinar is presented in English with closed captioning available. If you'd like to turn on English closed captioning, select the live transcript CC button from your Zoom menu. You can see on the screen here an image showing you what those look like. Next slide. So we have today just a very brief introduction, then talking about what is gender competency, description of the development and piloting process for the provider assessment tool to measure gender competency, then a description of the workshop that was carried out with Ghana Health Service family planning providers, some feedback with insights from family planning providers on the 6 modules, and then discussion, feedback, recommendations, and future use of the tool, and then some time for Q&A. Please do put your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat box. Next slide. Just to orient you to Data for Impact, if you're not familiar with us, Data for Impact, or D4I, is a USAID-funded project. It's a consortium led by the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in partnership with Palladium, ICF, JSI, and Tulane University. D4I strengthens local capacity to generate and use high-quality evidence and generate and use high-quality health data for strategic decisions on health policy and programming at national, subnational, and community levels. D4I investigates program effectiveness, integrates gender into all activities, supports adaptive management, and learns from evidence. D4I draws on the technical expertise that exists in each of our partner organizations and an extensive network of local partners in USAID's priority countries. Next slide. The global 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is a key international moment to call for an end to violence against women and girls. It runs from the 25th of November, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, until the 10th of December, Human Rights Day. The campaign closed this weekend, but we wanted to take this opportunity to observe this call to action and reflect upon a key message of the campaign. In 2023, the campaign theme was Invest to Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls. The gender competency tool fits perfectly within this theme as it specifically addresses one of the campaign's key messages. You can see here on the slide. Health workers are often the first, sometimes only, point of contact for women experiencing violence. They can provide compassionate care for survivors by offering first-line support, medical examination and treatment, and referrals to other essential services. This requires investing in training and resources to ensure appropriate care. Next slide. Now I will pass the baton to Catherine Andronopoulos to talk to us about what is gender competency and take us through the remaining of the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jessica. My name is Catherine Andronopoulos again, and I'm pleased for the opportunity to share some of our recent finding from USAID's and Data for Impact's work to strengthen family planning providers' gender competency. I serve as the activity lead for this project, and we are also joined today with fellow team members, Dr. Jana Wisniewski, a research associate with D4I, and Miss Evelyn Coco, a qualitative researcher who's working with us on this project in Ghana. Every day, family planning providers are faced with gender-related issues that complicate their clients' family planning decisions. These challenges can take many forms, from inequities in decision-making power between men and women, to limited skills in couples communication, lack of male engagement, and experiences of gender-based violence. Providers' own beliefs and attitudes about appropriate gender roles and behavior for women, men, girls, and boys can also influence how they provide services. Gender competency is the knowledge, attitudes, and skills that can help providers reduce gender-related barriers for their clients. By gaining skills in gender competency, providers can better identify gender-related issues faced by their clients and help them navigate these issues so that clients reach their family planning goals. Recognizing the importance of gender-related factors in family planning service provision, USAID has supported a series of projects to help providers. This began with work by HRH 2030 to establish the Gender Competency Framework for Family Planning Providers. Informed by formative research with providers in the Philippines and Ethiopia, as well as an expert review meeting, the framework outlines 6 domains of gender competency, as well as the knowledge, attitudes, and skills important for each one. Earlier domains in the framework established the foundation for the complexity inherent in later ones. These domains begin with gender-sensitive communication and continue with promoting individual agency, supporting legal rights and status related to family planning, engaging men and boys as partners and users, facilitating couples' positive communication and cooperative decision-making, and addressing gender-based violence. Following establishment of the framework, the HRH 2030 project developed an e-learning course for providers designed to build capacity in each domain. The 7 modules of the course increase knowledge of the domains and provide examples of practical applications of concepts. It is publicly available and can be completed in a self-paced format. After completing all modules, providers passing a knowledge assessment receive a certificate of completion. As a complement to the e-learning course, the Data for Impact project developed a tool to measure providers' competency in each of the 6 domains. Having a measure of gender competency allows providers to better understand which areas are in need of more training. This measurement tool can also facilitate assessments of changes in competency achieved through training activities. Together as a suite of resources, the tool and e-learning course can strengthen the gender competency of family planning providers, ultimately leading to increased quality and uptake of family planning services. The present activity by Data for Impact is being conducted in 3 phases. The first phase, which I'll describe briefly, focused on developing the gender competency tool. This was accomplished through a literature search of existing measurements, an expert review, and iterative cognitive interviews with 56 family planning providers in Ghana and Uganda. Informed by the literature search and expert review, the tool was designed as a self-assessment that can be used by individual providers to assess and reflect on their areas of strengths and weaknesses in gender competency. For each domain, a series of statements were developed mapped to 4-point Likert responses from strongly agree to strongly disagree. These items were piloted with providers to assess face and content validity of statements for each domain. For the iterative cognitive interviews in each country, a diverse sample of providers was recruited to represent different cadres of providers working in different facility types, and to include both male and female providers. In Ghana, we partnered with the Ghana Health Services, or GHS, and interviewed providers in the Greater Accra, Ashanti, and Eastern region, thereby capturing differences in urban and peri-urban settings and across religious groups in each place. After refining the tool in Ghana, we next piloted it in Bulisa and Kibale districts of Uganda, areas representing more rural communities with high fertility rates. Our partner in Uganda was the family planning activity supported by USAID. In addition to refining the statements used in each domain, this piloting informed how we structured the printable version of the tool to include a scoring answer key, as well as the development of a discussion guide. On the D4I website, you can access a parent document which explains the development of the tool and how it can be used, as well as short individual documents for each of the 6 domains, including a statement and response form, answer key, and discussion guide for that specific module. Providers can choose to complete individual modules on their own or all 6 together. This slide shows an example of the statement and response form from the first domain focused on gender-sensitive communication. The provider would read the statement and then indicate the degree to which they agree or disagree with it. Once complete, the provider would use the answer key, which includes the point value for each of the provider's responses. They are instructed to mark their response and then enter their score in the right-hand column. The provider totals their score and compares that to score values for low, moderate, and high gender competency. Finally, the third part of the tool is a discussion guide that explains key points about the domain and why certain responses would demonstrate greater gender competency. The discussion guide also includes individual reflection questions for providers using this tool on their own, as well as group discussion questions for teams of providers who might use the questions to reflect on their experiences within the domain. In this way, the discussion guide serves as a link to the more detailed e-learning course so that providers have a quantitative assessment of their gender competency and where they need additional training. For the next step of the activity, we worked with Agana Health Services to apply the tool with a group of providers and elicited feedback on the acceptability, appropriateness, and potential scale-up of each module, as well as the overall usability of the tool. A one-day workshop was held in Accra with 14 providers. The providers were split into 2 groups to allow for in-depth feedback on 3 modules by each group. We gathered feedback using short surveys that measured 3 types of implementation outcomes, again, including acceptability, appropriateness, and scale-up, followed by small group guided discussions. At the end of the workshop, all participants provided feedback on the tool, individual ideas for action planning, and suggestions for integrating the tool into future GHS trainings. GHS helped us to identify and invite providers, all of whom worked in the greater Accra region and had been in their family planning position for more than 1 year. We obtained diverse perspectives by including both male and female providers and providers of different cadres. Of the 14 participants, 29% were midwives, 57% were nurses, and 14% were physicians. Participants worked in a range of facility types, including regional and municipal hospitals, health centers, and health directorates. 9 participants held a management position. In the next series of slides, I'll share feedback provided for each of the domains of the tool. The first domain is gender-sensitive communication, which refers to the provider's ability to provide person-centered care and transmit information through verbal and nonverbal communication in a way that recognizes unequal power structures and promotes equality for all clients. It is measured with 13 statements, with one example being, I can explain the full range of contraceptive methods to men as effectively as I can to women. We captured providers' perception of acceptability, appropriateness, or here termed relevancy, and future application using several questions, but present one illustrative question for each category in this presentation, since responses were similar across questions within each category. Most providers strongly agreed with the content and answers provided in the module. 4 providers agreed and 3 strongly agreed that the content was relevant to the challenges they encounter when providing services. Almost all strongly agreed that they were interested in further specialized training in gender-sensitive communication. Gender-related issues described by providers were that most communication happens with women because there are fewer contraceptive options for men, and that there is a bias against providing teenage girls contraceptives. They also noted power differentials within couples, leading to women needing spouses to agree to family planning, with one provider stating, there are cases where the woman would like to continue contraception, but because of the power the man has, they have to say no. The next domain, promoting individual agency, refers to the provider's capacity to support an individual client's voluntary and informed decisions about whether, when, and how often to reproduce without pressure to conform to gender and cultural norms. It is measured with 15 statements, with one example being, through my counseling, I can guide clients so that they are not forced into a family planning decision they do not want. There was slightly less agreement with the content and answers in this module than the previous one. Almost all strongly agreed that items relating to promoting individual agency were relevant to the challenges they encounter, and most strongly agreed with wanting additional training in this area. Providers explained that it was important for both partners to agree to family planning to avoid conflict in the home, and therefore it is important for men to be educated about contraceptive options. They felt that the focus on agency emphasizes women's choice slightly more so than men's. The next domain is supporting legal rights and status related to family planning, which is the provider's ability to provide information and services to clients in accordance with rights and local laws and without interference of personal bias. It is measured with 10 statements, with one example being, I know whether spousal consent is legally required for sterilization, like for vasectomy or tubal ligation, as a form of contraception. 4 providers agreed and 3 strongly agreed with the content and answers provided, while most strongly agreed that the content is relevant to the challenges they encounter when providing services, and that they wanted further specialized training in this topic. In their discussion, providers emphasized that it was important for both providers and clients to know the laws related to how marital status affects family planning, and especially related to sterilization. They noted that the Ghanaian gender norms lead to men having more power and control, and for that reason, policies are skewed to the benefit of women to protect their choice. One provider explained that providers forget the legal part of rendering family planning services, so they need to be enlightened on the legalities so they do the right thing and not find themselves in trouble. The next domain refers to providers' recognition of men and boys as supportive partners to women and potential users of family planning. It can be demonstrated with male or female clients and couples, but should always be anchored in women's preferences and consent. It is measured with 13 statements, with one example being, male partners should also be responsible for family planning by using a method themselves or by providing support to their partner. Most strongly agreed with the content and answers in the module and strongly agreed that it is relevant to the challenges they encounter when providing services. Almost all strongly agreed that they wanted additional specialized training in this area. In discussions, providers asserted the need for more education with men and that they can play an important role as support to their partners with more education. They also felt outreach to men outside of facilities was needed. One provider explained that contraceptive methods for men are limited, but providers still counsel them to choose options which will suit both them and their partners. We advise them that they are also responsible for family planning. The 5th domain is facilitating positive couples communication and cooperative decision-making, which relates to the provider's capacity to help clients articulate, discuss, and come to an agreement on reproductive intentions and to make joint reproductive decisions as a couple. It is measured with 7 statements, with one example being, differences in control between a woman and man in a relationship influences how I talk about family planning with a couple. Overall, providers agreed with the content and answers and felt that it was relevant to the challenges they encounter when providing services. Almost all strongly agreed that they wanted further specialized training in this area. In their discussions, providers again noted a lack of contraceptive options for men is an issue, and that this places the onus for family planning on women. They explained that there are cultural and religious issues influencing family planning choices. Again, the importance of educating men on family planning was noted, in this case so that it can lead to a balance and dialogue between partners. One provider stated, there is a belief that the man is the head of the household and a woman cannot oppose a man's decision, while another provider responded to this that these beliefs widen communication between spouses. The final domain is addressing gender-based violence, which is the provider's ability to understand and recognize gender-based violence, incorporate principles of do no harm into family planning services, provide appropriate referrals, and reinforce the right to be treated with respect and live without violence. It is measured with 13 statements, with one example being, to protect a client, I am able to describe contraceptive methods a client can use without her partner or other people knowing about it. The domain was also well received by providers who strongly agreed with the content and answers, that the content in the module was relevant to the challenges that they encounter, and that they wanted further specialized training on the topic. In discussion, one provider explained that we meet a lot of female clients who experience physical and emotional abuse from their male partners. These men abuse women because, as men, they either want more kids or disagree with their partner's decision to use contraception. Providers also emphasize their clients' right to be free from violence, that gender norms place women at risk of GBV for male partners, and that as providers, it was important to know the protocol to follow when they observe clients experiencing GBV. In addition to individual module feedback, we also asked providers about the overall usability of the tool. We did so using select items from the Systems Usability Scale presented here, which was completed by all 14 providers who attended the workshop. The blue and green bars represent strongly agree and agree. Overall, providers reported that they felt confident using the tool, that the various parts were well integrated, and that most people would be able to learn to use this tool quickly on their own. Providers mostly disagreed or strongly disagreed that the tool was unnecessarily complex. This was echoed in the group discussions about the tool, during which providers stated that the tool was user-friendly, clear, and comprehensible, and that the content resonated with issues encountered by family planning providers. There were a few minor comments about wording and some discussion about the challenges of only having the tool accessible in English. While all modules resonated with providers, they were most enthusiastic about the ones related to engaging men and boys as partners and users, legal rights and status, and addressing GBV. To contextualize materials, one suggestion was that the Ghana Health Services might create a companion summary of laws and policies related to family planning in Ghana for providers using the tool. Providers also suggested the tool could be incorporated into in-service training for providers and liked the idea of providers coming together as a group to discuss the material in each module. In addition to provider feedback, we also timed completion of the tool and examined the provider's responses to the tool itself. Each module was completed in a short time frame, ranging from 8 to 19 minutes. There was good variation demonstrated, as shown by the average scores and ranges, and the fact that competency levels across the domains ranged from medium to high. Interestingly, providers scored in the medium range on 2 of the favored modules, including legal rights and status and addressing gender-based violence. Now that we have in-depth feedback about the tool, the next step is to move to examining ways both the tool and e-learning course can be used by providers. To complete this third phase, we are again working with Ghana Health Services and expanding the reach of the project. Together with GHS, we are exploring 3 different modalities of how the tool and e-learning course can be integrated into in-service training. We just completed a 2-day in-person workshop where providers completed the tool, reviewed the e-learning course, and had open dialogue in Tamale. Next, we will use the tool and course in a blended format wherein providers meet in person, then complete the course on their own, and regroup again in person to discuss the content. The third modality will be completely online and will include online group meetings with participants located across Ghana who complete the course on their own and join online meetings to discuss the content. In summary, gender competency is the knowledge, attitudes, and skills family planning providers need to help reduce the gender-related barriers faced by their clients. The newly developed self-assessment tool was found to be easy to use and appropriate for the challenges encountered by providers in their work. By working with Ghana Health Services, we are learning and demonstrating how these resources can be integrated into provider trainings in a real-world setting, and what factors might be considered in wider implementation of these resources. I want to thank our team in Ghana and the Ghana Health Services, as well as others at USAID and D4I for their support of this work, and we look forward to your questions. So if you do have questions about the gender competency tool, the e-learning course, please put those in the Q&A, and we would really welcome a rich discussion about this. I'm excited to see the many participants with expertise in family planning and gender, and this is a great forum to be able to discuss this work and issues related to gender and family planning.
All right, Catherine, we have our first question from Sarah Albana. She says, how did you select the providers besides geographic locations? Did you find that providers were willing and interested to participate, or was there some hesitancy and resistance?
Great, thank you. I'll ask Evelyn to contribute to this as well. The providers were, we worked with Ghana Health Services to help identify the providers, especially to ensure that we had diversity in the areas that I mentioned. And then they were invited by Ghana Health Services to come. And then Evelyn, can you tell us a little bit more about their participation?
So just as you said, we collaborated with Ghana Health Service, and we gave them an idea of what we want. So a mix of all the cadres, and if possible, and then we also stressed on the fact that we needed a balance between male and female. So they basically contacted all the participants, and they were formally invited, so there was no hesitation. I think all of them were willing to come and participate. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll also add that one of the things that we've thought about is how having these resources in different formats that are accessible in a self-paced way might help mitigate some of the issues where when you do pull providers away for training, that means that they're able to do their work. And it is a really big investment to have providers participating in a training versus doing the work that they need to do. I think working with Ghana Health Services has really kind of helped us think about that acutely as a public service, needing to provide family planning services in a wide scale. And so that's part of what we're hoping to learn a little bit about as we do these 3 different modalities. That the first one was your kind of more traditional 2-day in-person workshop where providers come together in that format. But as we move forward, we're going to be able to look at a lighter touch where people come together and then go back and complete the e-learning course on their own and then come together again. So you're not missing 2 days from your job to be able to participate in the training. And then the third one where we do it completely online. And so, each of these presents different complexities, but they also have different kind of ways that they impact when a provider could complete the training and what that means in terms of, pulling them away from work when they do so. And I will say that I mentioned the timing of how long it takes to do the tool for the e-learning course, which is 7 modules. As we have worked with it, it takes about 20 minutes on average to do each of those modules. So they could do it all together or they could break it up.
All right, the next question, is there consideration for expanding the use of this tool with religious leaders, given their societal influence in family planning related or family related matters and their ancillary role as counselors?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I know that, when USAID started working on this concept of gender competency for family planning, the idea that gender competency is needed in other domains of healthcare service provision, it was definitely at the forefront of that thinking. And so that, through momentum and other kind of projects, thinking about that. But the idea of also using this with religious leaders is something that I think I'd love to investigate further and think about how we might tweak some of the statements so that it would be appropriate for them versus a family planning provider. And the tool and the e-learning course focus on skills, but also on attitudes. And I think that those components that are focused on attitudes would be great with religious leaders.
Evelyn, would you like to add anything to the religious leaders idea?
Not really.
Okay, no problem. All right, the next question, would you consider a shorter version that could be integrated in the supportive supervision checklist? And how long does it take to fill the full tool?
Well, the tool, let's see, if we go back to this, I can show you the slide with the timing of each of the modules so that you can see, adding this up, how long it would take. I would think for all 6 domains, this is about an hour or so to do all of the domains. The promoting individual agency one takes the longest. And then, of course, I navigated away from the question. Would you wait? Is it the shorter version?
Would you consider a shorter version that can be integrated into the supportive supervision checklist?
I think that is something we could potentially look at. This this tool, the way it's designed, is getting at knowledge, attitudes, and skills. So knowledge and attitudes might be difficult to observe, which is part of why we designed this as a self-assessment tool. That was part of our decision-making and thinking about how you measured attitude. You can't necessarily observe that. And so having providers provide their perspectives allows that. But there would be elements of this that they're related to skills that maybe could be put into a shorter supervision checklist. Thank you.
Okay, are there plans to translate this into other languages?
I think that would be really helpful. In the current activity, it's not part of the scope of work that we would be doing in this activity. The tool is probably easier to translate because we have it in a PDF version. The e-learning course would require a little bit more work to do in Spanish, and another kind of project supporting that, because you'd have to redo it. It includes a lot of streamed videos and very interactive elements, voice recordings. And so right now we don't, but I do think that that could be something that's useful moving forward. That we were really, because some of what we're touching on, as you saw with the individual statements, we're getting at elements of power, for example, agency, and using that terminology is not really that useful when you're trying to have a conversation with a provider. They're kind of concepts that can be distorted depending on the language. You have to, the wording was really, really important. We found even working in English. And so that's why in our piloting and all of that, we stuck to English to make sure that we were getting the concept, which, engaging men and boys, or how you facilitate positive couples communication, or what it means to support agency for your client, we're already pretty complicated concepts. So we stuck with English. And then now that we feel that what we have represented in the statements is authentically representing the idea that was in each of the domains, it could maybe move to language translation, which then brings another level of complexity.
And Evelyn, could you talk a little bit about, Catherine mentioned the participants wanting some of the tool to be in local languages. Could you talk a little bit about that aspect?
So basically, we have different levels of education when it comes to participants. And so they felt that using some of the local language will bring a better understanding of some of these statements. But I might add that most of the people we interacted with have some basic level of understanding English and be able to read. And so translating to some of this local language, it will come later, but then I feel for now, we will start with English, and we will get a majority of people participate in. But maybe for future purposes, we could think of translating it to a few of the major languages in Ghana.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, there was some, I think everybody understood the tool well, but there were some terms where there was some discussion of, okay, how would we say this in the local language? Just trying to make sure everybody understood. And so in a big group that worked really well because you had enough people to figure it out. On your own, it might be a little bit more difficult. So we talked about having the companion document from Ghana Health Service. There might be some, there might be an opportunity to add some of that into that companion document. Hey, this is what this term means in the local language in case you need it. All right, the next question, is this meant to be a one-time training for each provider, or is it intended to be taken multiple times to compare answers over time?
So the tool could be taken multiple times to kind of try and measure differences in competency, and hopefully see those go up. And as we are implementing this in this kind of demonstration setting, we are having providers complete the tool at the beginning, and then after they've been exposed to the e-learning course to complete it again. The e-learning course, I don't know if it was specifically designed to retake, but I will say ourselves working with the course, it is helpful actually as a way, as a refresher, so that providers could take the e-learning course, and then you're able, the way it's designed is once you are logged into the e-learning course, you can quickly go to different modules. So let's say that you wanted a refresher on legal rights and statuses, you could certainly jump back in and redo that module, and kind of go over some of the example statements they have for promoting that and work. But the hope for the tool, apart from the e-learning course, is that with this as a separate measure, we could use that to see if there are changes in provider competency over time.
All right, next question. This is a question for Evelyn. Based on your training experience with the family planning providers, in both in Accra and in Tamale, which modules were providers most engaged with, and which were the most challenging for them?
Okay. I think Catherine even mentioned that in her presentation. So basically, if we look at the 6 models, and talk about engaging men and boys, and then dealing with gender-based violence and legal, the one that has to do with legal. And I must say, because these are issues that they come into contact with, but they really don't have the skills currently to deal with them. So they feel that these are very eye-opening and very interesting and very valuable for them as providers to be able to have some knowledge about how to deal with these things. But when it comes to the 2 other ones that deal basically with communication, they feel that these are things we are already doing. It's just more like a refresher for us and a bit more to add to what we are already doing. So I must say that's how it expands when you look at the different models. Thank you.
I will say, I'd like to add to that I think in addition to like the favored modules, the feedback that was in the initial workshop that was focused on the tool that we just presented on, as well as some of the work that Evelyn has started doing in Tamale, using both resources, is that providers liked the opportunity to discuss these issues with others. And so, that's why in the discussion guide, we have questions that you could think of on your own, but then also that you could talk to a colleague who was also kind of focused on this. And it could be in a large group setting, like what we've designed here, but also because these are self-paced, self-assessment tools that people can use on their own, you could also have a group of 2 to 3 providers in one clinic who are working through the information or one section of the information, say GBV, and then having a brown bag lunch and learn, or an opportunity to sit together and talk about these issues. So I think feedback from providers is that it's nice to have scoring and to have metrics of this, and to also have the e-learning course to go through that. But what's really also nice is the opportunity to have a discussion with other people about these issues, how it's affecting their work, and suggestions on what they might do. So that kind of interactive nature of incorporating the way people use these resources as something that's important.
All right, that is all the questions in the Q&A so far. Give you one more opportunity to type those in if anyone has anything else. Otherwise, Catherine, Evelyn, any last thoughts before I hand it back over to Jessica to wrap us up?
Nothing from me.
I will just say that I'm really excited to have these tools publicly available and to learn more about how we can integrate them. And also just really thankful for the opportunity to work with Ghana Health Services and when we were in Uganda with the family planning activity. And I think it really added richness to our learning to have a government agency who is thinking about training their providers, as well as an implementing partner or special projects focused on family planning. And by being able to work with Ghana Health Services on this part of it, you know, it's really exciting to think about how governments could use this in wider application and the sustainability of that, integrating that into their training.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Evelyn. Well, thanks to all of you for showing your interest and setting aside the time to participate in this webinar. We're really excited to see this work come to fruition. It's been an interesting process over the years, and it's great that it's at a point that it's getting used. And we really appreciate all the work that that your team has done, Catherine. As we have noted, we will be sharing the slides and a link to this recording. So please feel free to share with others who were not able to attend today, give interest to them, and keep an eye out for other webinars from Data for Impact in the near future. Thanks, everyone.